The smell hit Riley first. Burning metal mixed with something sweet, like honey left too long on a hot stove. She'd been up late fixing a mining truck, and the sun wouldn't rise for another hour on Mars Colony 7. But that smell made her put down her coffee and walk around to the back of her garage. The spaceship was a mess. It sat there smoking and sparking in the dark, leaving a trail of broken parts across her back lot. The thing looked like someone had taken a beautiful piece of art and run it through a blender. One wing was completely gone. The other hung on by what looked like hope and prayer. Riley grabbed a flashlight and moved closer. Through the cracked cockpit glass she could see the pilot. Purple blood dripped from wounds on his forearms. Forearms meant Vraxian, she knew that much from the news. They were supposed to be peaceful traders, traveling between worlds selling everything from spices to starship parts. This one looked like he'd been in a fight and lost badly. She yanked open the cockpit door and it fell off completely. Great. Another thing to fix. The alien inside stirred, and a broken device on his chest sparked to life. His translator, she realized. Please, the voice came out all static and broken. Must go. They hunt. They come. Riley looked at the sky. Nothing but stars and the distant Earth hanging like a blue marble. Nobody's hunting anybody right now, friend. Let's get you out of there. The Vraxian tried to stand but collapsed immediately. Purple blood was everywhere now. Riley didn't know much about alien biology, but bleeding was bleeding. She grabbed him under two of his forearms and half carried, half dragged him into her garage. Cannot pay, he gasped as she set him on a workbench and grabbed her first aid kit. Honor forbids taking without. Will you shut up about paying? Riley started cleaning his wounds with stuff she hoped wouldn't kill him. Regular bandages seemed to work fine. I didn't ask for money. You crashed in my yard and you're hurt. End of story. While she worked on his injuries, the alien kept staring at her like she'd grown a second head. He managed to tell her his name was Kato, and he was 20 cycles old, whatever that meant. Young by the sound of his voice. He'd been running from something bad, something he wouldn't talk about, when his ship's engine gave out. Your ship, Kato said weakly. Cannot fix. Technology too advanced for humans. Need Vraxian mechanics, Vraxian tools, Vraxian. Riley was already walking outside to look at the damage. She came back shaking her head. Your engine's blown, your navigation core is fried, and your hull looks like Swiss cheese. But broken is broken, whether it's human or alien. She pulled out her grandfather's old tool kit. He'd been a mechanic in the Earth military, back when humans first started colonizing Mars. The tools were older than Riley, worn smooth from years of use. But good tools were good tools. Kato watched from the bench as Riley dove into his ship. She couldn't read any of the alien writing, but she didn't need to. A blown coupling looked the same in any language. Fried circuits were fried circuits. She found the main problem quick enough. The power core had disconnected from the engine when he crashed. The connectors were some kind of fancy alien material she'd never seen before, already crumbling to dust. This is where a normal mechanic would give up, Riley said to herself. But normal had never been her style. She grabbed a roll of military-grade electrical tape, the kind that could supposedly hold a spaceship together. Time to test that theory. Where the alien nanobonds had failed, she wrapped tape. Where exotic metals had shattered, she welded on steel plates from an old Earth freighter she'd been cutting up for scrap. Kato kept trying to tell her it wouldn't work. His people had been building spaceships for thousands of years. Humans had barely figured out faster-than-light travel. But Riley didn't listen. She just kept working, rewiring systems with copper wire, replacing broken tubes with rubber hoses, and basically rebuilding half his ship with junk. The sun was coming up when she finally fired up the engine. The ship shook, rattled, and then hummed to life. It sounded rough, like an old truck that needed a tune-up, but it was running. Kato stood in the doorway, his four eyes wide with shock. This is impossible. You used primitive materials, basic tools. It should not work. Riley wiped her hands on a rag and shrugged. Yeah, well, sometimes primitive gets the job done. Your fancy tech failed. My grandfather's tape didn't. She handed him a thermos of coffee and a peanut butter sandwich wrapped in foil. For the road. Or space. Whatever. Kato looked at the items like she'd handed him holy relics. His four hands trembled as he took them. The debt I owe you cannot be. You don't owe me anything, Riley said firmly. Just get where you're going safely. And maybe avoid whoever was chasing you. The Vraxian climbed into his patched-up ship, still looking stunned. As the engine powered up, he stared at Riley through the repaired cockpit window. There was something in those four eyes she couldn't read. Confusion maybe. Or wonder. The ship lifted off, wobbling a bit but holding together. Riley watched it disappear into the rust-colored morning sky, leaving a trail of slightly black smoke that probably wasn't great but wouldn't kill him. She walked back into her garage and finished her cold coffee. Just another weird night on Mars. Riley had her favorite music playing while she worked on old Joe's hovercycle. The thing was ancient, held together by rust and hope, but Joe needed it to get to the mines every day. She was trying to figure out why it kept pulling to the left when everything went dark. Not dark like a cloud passing over. Dark like someone had parked a building over her garage. She slid out from under the hovercycle, squinting up at the sky. Her first thought was that the weather dome had malfunctioned again. Mars Colony 7 had these huge atmospheric processors that sometimes threw weird shadows. But this was different. This shadow had edges. Sharp metal edges. Riley stepped outside and nearly dropped her wrench. A spaceship hung above the colony. Not just any spaceship. This thing was massive, the kind of massive that made you wonder how it stayed in the air. 3 kilometers of alien metal, bristling with weapons that could probably turn the entire colony into a smoking crater. It looked like someone had taken a city and taught it to fly. The colony sirens started screaming. People ran out of buildings pointing and shouting. Military trucks roared past her garage, soldiers hanging out the windows with their rifles like those would do any good against something that big. Her neighbor, Betty, stood in her doorway with a frying pan in her hand like she was ready to defend her diner with breakfast equipment. But Riley noticed something odd. The ship wasn't attacking. It was just sitting there like it was waiting for something. Then a shuttle detached from its belly. Small compared to the mothership but still bigger than her entire garage. It was headed straight for her. "Oh, come on," Riley muttered. "What now?" The shuttle landed in her parking lot, crushing her reserved for customers sign. The door opened with a hiss of steam that seemed completely unnecessary. Everything these aliens did had to be dramatic, apparently. Out came the fanciest Vraxian she'd ever seen. He had medals on his chest that looked like they weighed more than she did. His 4 arms each had golden bands that caught the morning sun. Behind him marched 12 guards in armor so polished Riley could see her reflection in it. The leader walked up to her like he owned the place. Which, considering the size of his ship, he probably could. "You are Riley Walker?" His voice was deep, commanding. He didn't need a translator. His English was perfect, just with a weird accent that made every word sound important. Riley was suddenly very aware that she was covered in engine grease and wearing her rattiest coveralls. Yes. I am Admiral Torvin, High Commander of the Vraxian Merchant Fleet, Protector of the 7 Trading Routes, Guardian of the Stellar Gates." That's a lot of titles. The Admiral's 4 eyes focused on her with an intensity that made her want to apologize for existing. "You repaired my son's ship. For free." The words hung in the air like an accusation. Riley's brain took a second to catch up. "Your son? Cato is your son. He is heir to the largest trade guild in 7 systems. The wealth of 1,000 worlds flows through our family's hands." The Admiral's voice got even deeper, which shouldn't have been possible. "And you fixed his ship. For nothing. Without payment. Without contract. Without even asking his name or status. I mean, he was bleeding. A lot. The debt he owes, the debt our entire clan now owes, cannot be calculated. Our greatest mathematicians have tried. Their computers crashed. You have created an honor crisis that has reached the Galactic Trade Council. 3 civilizations have offered to help calculate what we owe you." Riley felt like she'd stepped into some weird dream. "Look, I don't want. Want is irrelevant." The Admiral made a gesture with 2 of his arms. 2 guards stepped forward carrying a box that glowed from the inside. They opened it and Riley had to shield her eyes. Inside was what looked like a tiny star, contained in some kind of force field. "This is a stellar core fragment," the Admiral announced. "Compressed starlight from a supernova. Worth approximately 17 billion credits. It powers cities. It fuels battleships. It is insufficient payment, but it is all we carry. I can't accept that." Riley backed up, nearly tripping over her toolbox. "That's insane. I fixed a ship. It took me 1 night and some tape." The Admiral's 4 eyes narrowed. "Then you leave us no choice. You must accept adoption into our clan. You would have voting rights in the guild, a seat on the Trade Council, 3 moons in the Vraxian system, and—" "Okay, hold up." Riley raised her hands like she was trying to stop traffic. "This is getting out of hand. What if we just call it even? Nobody owes anybody anything?" The silence was deafening. Every guard turned to stare at her. The Admiral's 4 arms dropped to his sides. Even the hovercycle seemed to stop making noise. One guard actually gasped. Another dropped his ceremonial spear. The Admiral stared at her for a long moment. Then he said very slowly, like he was trying to understand each word, "Humans are very strange." Riley couldn't argue with that. From where she stood, the aliens were the weird ones. But she kept that thought to herself. Riley was about to tell the Admiral that calling humans strange was pretty rich coming from a four-armed alien when every screen in her garage started going crazy. Her computer, the old TV she used for background noise, even the ancient tablet she used for orders, they all lit up with red warning signals she'd never seen before. The Admiral's whole body changed. One second he looked like a disappointed father dealing with a stubborn child. The next he was every inch a military commander. His four hands moved to weapons Riley hadn't even noticed he was carrying. "They found us," he said. His voice had gone cold hard. "Who's they?" Riley asked, but she had a sinking feeling she already knew. The answer came from above. Ships started appearing in the sky, but these weren't like the Admiral's clean metal cruiser. These things looked sick. They pulsed with a greenish light that hurt to look at, like something organic that had been turned into a machine. Or maybe the other way around. Riley counted a dozen, then 2 dozen, then stopped counting. Hegemony collectors. The Admiral spat the words like they tasted bad. Cato was running from them. He discovered their illegal expansion into human territory. They've been setting up extraction sites on your outer colonies. Extraction sites for what? She never got an answer. A green beam shot down from the nearest ship, so bright it left spots in Riley's vision. When she could see again, her garage was full of new visitors. These aliens were nothing like the Vraxians. They were tall, way too tall, with bodies that seemed stretched out wrong. They wore suits that looked like they were grown rather than built, all tubes and organic panels that pulsed with that same sick green light. The leader stood nearly 8 feet tall, and when it spoke, its voice sounded like someone grinding glass in a blender. The fugitive debtor Cato owes 7 life cycles to the hegemony. His debt remains unpaid. The Admiral's guards formed a protective circle around Riley, weapons drawn. She noticed their hands were shaking. Whatever these collectors were, even trained soldiers were scared of them. The collector leader ignored the guards completely, its attention fixed on Riley. "You harbored the fugitive. You aided his escape. By hegemony law, the debt transfers to you." "Hold on," Riley said, trying to keep her voice steady. "What's a life cycle? What debt?" The kid was hurt and running for his life. "Irrelevant." The collector raised something that looked like a mechanical octopus had mated with a medical scanner. Tubes writhed from it like living things. "We collect years of life force as payment. 7 years from Cato or 70 from you. Species with shorter lifespans pay more. Humans live such brief lives. 10 of your years equals 1 Vraxian year." Riley's blood went cold. "You're talking about stealing years off my life? Like actually aging me?" "Not aging. Extraction. We take the life energy directly. You will simply have 70 fewer years to live." The collector said it like it was discussing the weather. "The process is painless. You will not remember the extracted years as they will never happen." The Admiral stepped forward, all 4 arms spread in a threatening gesture. "She is under Vraxian protection. You cannot. Your protection is irrelevant." The collector didn't even look at him. "We outnumber you 3 to 1. Your flagship is powerful but not that powerful. Stand aside or be destroyed." More collectors beamed down, surrounding them. The Admiral's guards looked ready to fight, but Riley could do math. 3 to 1 odds with ships that looked like nightmare fuel? This wouldn't end well. The collector leader moved closer, raising its extraction device. "Submit to extraction, human. Your debt must be paid." Riley stared at the device and something clicked in her brain. The tubes, the way they connected, the neural interface crown at the top, she'd seen this before. Not exactly this, but something really similar. "Wait a minute," she said slowly. "That's based on human tech. That's old Earth biotransfer technology." The collector's head tilted at an angle that shouldn't have been possible. "Impossible. We developed extraction technology 3,000 cycles ago." "No, you didn't." Riley's mind was racing now. "I've seen those components. My grandfather worked on the original prototypes before they were banned. Earth military was trying to transfer life force from dying soldiers to save others. The project got shut down because it didn't work right. The human nervous system kept rejecting the process." She pointed at the device. "Those biotubes? That's Earth tech. The neural crown? Same design as the banned military prototype. You guys didn't invent this. You stole it or found it somewhere." The room had gone very quiet. Even the Admiral was staring at her. Riley looked the collector leader right in its glowing green eyes. "You've never tried this on a human, have you?" You don't know what happens when you use our own technology against us. The silence stretched out for what felt like forever. The collector's grip on its device tightened. The debt must be paid, it said finally, but there was something different in its voice. Something that sounded almost like uncertainty. Yeah. Riley crossed her arms, hoping she looked more confident than she felt. Go ahead and try. But don't blame me when your stolen human tech meets actual human biology. Riley looked around the garage. The Admiral's guards had their weapons drawn but looked terrified. The collectors stood there with their nightmare technology, ready to steal 70 years of her life. She thought about running, but where would she go? These things had found Kato across star systems. No, running wasn't an option. But maybe, just maybe, her crazy theory was right. Fine, Riley said, stepping forward. Everyone stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Take your payment. The Admiral grabbed her shoulder with one of his 4 hands. Riley Walker, this is not your debt to pay. Kato is my son. If anyone should. It's okay. She gently pushed his hand away and locked eyes with the collector leader. The thing's green eyes glowed brighter, almost hungry. Go ahead. Extract your 70 years. Let's get this over with. The collector moved faster than she expected, like it was afraid she might change her mind. It pressed the device against her temple, and she felt cold metal tendrils wrap around her head. The biotubes attached themselves to her skin with little suction sounds that made her stomach turn. The extraction will now begin, the collector announced. 70 human years transferring to the hegemony reserves. Green energy coursed through the tubes. It felt like ice water being pumped directly into her brain. Riley gritted her teeth, her hands balling into fists. The machine started humming, quiet at first, then louder. Her vision went fuzzy around the edges. This was it. Either she was right about human biology being incompatible, or she was about to lose most of her life. The humming got louder. The garage lights started flickering. Riley felt something in her head pushing back against the extraction, like her brain was fighting the invasion. The ice water feeling turned to fire. Then the machine screamed. Not a mechanical whine or an alarm. It actually screamed like a living thing in pain. Sparks exploded from the device, showering the collector in white-hot fragments. The alien tried to pull the device away, but it was stuck. The biotubes fused to Riley's head and convulsing like dying snakes. Disconnect. Disconnect. The collector was yanking desperately at the machine. Riley grabbed the tubes and pulled. They came away with a sick tearing sound, leaving red marks on her skin. The device flew across the garage and hit the wall, where it continued sparking and screaming. But that wasn't the worst part. The feedback surge rippled through every collector in the room. They all grabbed their heads, screaming in that grinding glass voice. Their biosuits flickered and sparked. Green energy arced between them like lightning. One collector fell to its knees. Another stumbled into a tool rack, sending wrenches flying. Riley stood there, swaying slightly, feeling like she'd been hit by a truck then run over by its bigger brother. But she was alive. And more importantly, she still felt like herself. No missing years. No gaps in her memory. The collector leader struggled to stand, its suit still sparking. What are you? Riley smiled, though it probably looked more like a grimace. Time for the performance of her life. Human, she said, trying to sound confident despite her shaking legs. Turns out our neural plasticity doesn't play nice with your extraction tech. We've got redundant neural pathways, distributed consciousness processing. You try to extract from one part, the rest compensates and floods your system. She was making half of it up, throwing together words she'd heard in science documentaries and old military reports. But the smoking device on the floor sold the bluff better than any explanation could. That's impossible, the collector wheezed. No species is immune to extraction. Yeah. Well, no species until now. Riley forced herself to stand straighter. Human brains don't work like other species. We use both hemispheres independently. Our neurons fire in chaotic patterns. We've got this thing called neuroplasticity that means our brains literally rewire themselves constantly. Your tech can't handle it. The collectors were looking at each other now, their body language screaming panic even through their alien forms. Riley pressed on. You're saying all humans are like this? Every last one. 8 billion people on Earth alone. Colonies on Mars, the Moon, Europa. We're spread across 50 systems now. She gestured at the destroyed device. And we're all economically toxic to you. Your extraction technology will fail every single time. The collector leader looked at his damaged equipment, then at his subordinates who were still recovering from the feedback. Then its green eyes turned to the Admiral, whose ships hung in the sky like steel storm clouds. If we cannot collect from humans, the collector said slowly, and the Vraxians ally with them, you get nothing, Riley finished. Ever. No debts. No life force. No power over any of us. She took a step forward and the collector actually stepped back. So here's my offer. Live. Now. Forever. Don't come back to human space. Don't come back to Vraxian space. Or we tell every species in the galaxy how to become immune. How to overload your systems. How to turn your own weapons against you. The bluff hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Riley's heart was pounding so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. If they called her bluff, if they demanded proof, if they tried another device. But fear was a powerful thing. And right now the collectors were afraid. 6 months had passed since Riley scared off the collectors with a broken machine and a really good bluff. Now her little garage on Mars Colony 7 had become the most famous building in human space. Tour groups showed up daily, pointing at everything and taking pictures. Politicians gave speeches outside. Someone had even put up a bronze plaque right where she'd stood against the collectors. Riley had to step over it every morning, usually while carrying her coffee and trying not to trip. The funny thing was she still fixed hover cycles. You know you could retire, Cato said, watching her work on another ancient mining vehicle. You're literally the most famous human in the galaxy. Riley was under the hover cycle, only her legs sticking out. Pass me the fusion wrench. The one with the blue handle. Cato used 2 of his 4 hands to hand her the tool. Over the past months he'd gotten good at helping in the garage, even if he was technically the Vraxian ambassador to humanity now. He wore fancy robes most of the time, but kept a spare set of coveralls in Riley's office. The collectors have withdrawn completely to their home system, he continued. They haven't bothered anyone since you terrified them. 17 species have applied for human friendship treaties. Everyone wants to ally with the species that's immune to life extraction. Good for them, Riley grunted, tightening something. My father wants to name a battleship after you. Tell him no. I did. He's naming it after your garage instead. The wrench slipped. Riley rolled out from under the hover cycle, grease on her cheek, staring at him. You're kidding. The VMS Riley's Auto and Aerospace will be the flagship of the combined fleet. Cato's 4 eyes gleamed with what she'd learned was his version of a smirk. 30 kilometers long, armed with the newest hybrid weapons, and it has a small garage in Honor Bay 3. Why does a battleship need a garage? Father insisted. He says all the best solutions come from garages now. Riley couldn't help it. She laughed, really laughed, the kind that made her sides hurt. All this because I fixed your broken ship. All this because you fixed it for free, Cato corrected. Though I notice you now charge me full price for everything. You can afford it now, Ambassador. I've seen your expense account. The original garage had been expanded into a proper spaceport. Where once there had been a small parking lot, now landing pads stretched for half a mile. The old building remained though, preserved exactly as it was. Riley had insisted on that. She still worked in the same bay with the same tools, even if now she had assistance from 12 different species. Outside she could hear the usual chaos. Human mechanics were teaching Vraxians how to fix things with tape and wire. Vraxian engineers were showing humans how to properly maintain antimatter drives. The combination was creating technology nobody had imagined possible. Ships held together with human stubbornness and alien precision. Engines that ran on scientific principles and pure hope. The Vraxian Human Trade Compact had been signed right on her oil-stained workbench. She hadn't cleaned it first, and now there was a permanent coffee ring on the galaxy's most important trade document. Economists were calling it the Walker Principle, the radical idea that some debts could be paid forward instead of back. Instead of demanding payment for kindness, you passed that kindness on to someone else. It was driving traditional economists crazy. The Galactic Trade Council had needed to rewrite thousand-year-old laws. 3 different species had tried to calculate the mathematical formula for paying it forward, and their computers had all crashed. Your father invited me to dinner again, Riley said, wiping her hands on a rag. Oh no, Cato said, all 4 eyes widening. You're not going to accept, are you? He's very persistent. He wants to formally adopt you into the clan. There would be ceremonies. Ritual combat. You'd have to memorize the 17 sacred trading routes. Ritual combat? It's mostly symbolic. Mostly. Riley went back under the hover cycle. Tell him I'm busy. I've been telling him that for 6 months. The waiting area was full of noise. Human kids were playing with Vraxian younglings, a game that seemed to involve a lot of running and screaming in multiple languages. Their parents sat together, sharing stories and pictures on devices that shouldn't be compatible but somehow were. Above the door, Riley had put up new signs. The original Riley's Auto and Aerospace was still there, faded and perfect. Next to it hung a newer one, "An oh good deed goes unpunished by excessive gratitude." And below that, in smaller letters that Cato had insisted on, "Standard rates apply. No exceptions. This means you, Ambassador Cato." The collector threat was gone, scared away by humanity's chaotic biology. Their extraction economy had collapsed when word spread that an entire species was immune. But Riley knew that wasn't the real victory. The real victory was outside, in the mixed crews working together. It was in the hybrid ships launching daily, held together by human improvisation and alien knowledge. It was in the way, paying it forward, had spread through the galaxy like a virus of kindness, disrupting everything and somehow making it better. "You changed the galaxy," Cato said quietly. Riley emerged from under the hovercycle, wiping her hands. "Nah. I just fixed a ship." The galaxy changed itself. With tape and borrowed tools. The best kind of fix. As the day wound down, Riley stood in her garage doorway, watching the sun set over the expanded spaceport. Ships came and went, human and alien pilots waving as they passed. The bronze plaque caught the light, but she ignored it. Tomorrow there would be more ships to fix, more problems to solve with solutions that shouldn't work but did. And probably more dinner invitations from Cato's father to dodge. But today had been good. She'd fixed 3 hovercycles, taught a Vraxian mechanic the beauty of zip ties, and hadn't been adopted into any alien families. Riley called that a win.